Get started. All right. Well, welcome to episode 2 of the Mundo Method, and we have a special guest today, Fabian, who's a real estate investor, and we're actually going to talk about buying a trucking company today. So, welcome. Figured you'd maybe just give a quick intro on yourself and give us a little bit of a background about who you are, and then we can dive right in and just see what we can find online.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my name is Fabian Zuniga. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's kind of like border with Montana, pretty much. Um, I have so I just started in real estate like March this year, 2023. I'm trying to get some in wholesaling,
Nice.
but yeah, but because my niece and her boyfriend they work as BAs for a guy in Texas, and then they explain me all the process, how is the wholesaling process, and then say, okay, let's jump in. So I create my LLC, I got my checking banking account. So and then I went to the websites and trying to Google something, and then Pace Morby pop up. So that's why I'm trying to find some answers, and all the time Pace Morby show up. So say this guy is in, this is
Yeah,
the
he's
guy.
pretty good he's pretty good at marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then I start for him. So and then he that was the time when he released the book. So I got the book. So I got into the book and then start reading, and then I saw his show his podcast on Sundays, and then people and thousands of people online, and then I start searching on the website about his community, and then it was huge community, so that's why, and then I get involved, and just joined the community, and after I joined the community is awesome, and has been a good experience be part of the sub 2 community.
Awesome.
So now with the new program, he has like a zero down. Always I have experience in trucking. Before I moved to Canada, I used to have a like trucking company
So
in Colombia,
do you have an active CDL right now?
like active. You mean?
The commercial driver's license?
Yeah, I do have the commercial driver
Okay.
license
All right.
active here in in Canada. Yeah, I
Very
got it
cool.
last. Yeah, I got it last year. So, um,
How long
but
have you how long have you been driving a truck?
uh, so before I moved to Canada, it was like 7 years. But
Okay.
it wasn't like 100% driving. Sometimes I had to move trucks from one city to another city, because I used to have a truck, my personal truck, but I got another guy driving it. So and then other guys they give me some owners they give me to manage their trucks, because my driver he is a mechanic. He was a mechanic at that time. And then, in Colombia, it's too many mountains, and sometimes they don't have access to a mechanic up there. So when they go in convoys, they always trying to get in convoys with this guy because he was a mechanic. So most of the time, so when I drive, so it was, you say, in a week, maybe 10 hours, something like that. So
What
that's
what would you say is the biggest difference between, truck driving and from like Colombia to Canada to or even if you have any experience here in the US? What are there any differences or is it kind of all relatively the same to you?
it's gonna be this pretty much the geographic is different for sure. because we have a lot of mountains there. Even the trucks, the transmission are different, you know, all
Mm.
the pistons, all the that's sorry, the transmission parts are different. They are bigger because it's a lot of mountain. Even when I bought my truck, they send them from Mexico, and then when they say, oh, it's going to Colombia, they put different transmission. So but it's just the geographic and then the weather too. And here in Canada, um, especially in winter, you have to change the trucks. You know, you have to change the tires before you go to the rocky areas, like the
Yeah.
mountains area. You know, the British Columbia area, the West End. So you go Seattle to the top, and then east side of the northeast of the Seattle, all these mountains. So to go from the middle, the center of the country, the Canada, to go to the port is in Vancouver, Vancouver port. So all these trucks they had to go on top of those mountains. So sometimes they have some before they get to the mountains on winter -30, they had to go out there, change the tires before they jump in those hills. So
It's a lot
it's
of
more
work.
like, yeah, oh yeah, it's a lot of work, especially when you are in it's snowing, -35 outside or -40, so it's pretty hard.
Hey,
Yeah.
you can do that. You can do just about anything, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then there is a lot of people here, and like friends of mine, they work just from March until November, and then they go for 3 months. They go to USA or they go to back home, Colombia, Mexico, or something like that, because it's not easy sometimes. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, let's dive in and first let's talk about your buy box as far as are you looking for, like, if we're looking today, we're going to look for a trucking company for you. Are you looking for passive opportunities, or are you looking to be more of like a hands-on operator? And what kind of fleet size do you want? Are you looking for like a 2 or 3, maybe up to 5 truck deal, or are you looking for something larger like 20 and up?
Yeah. So I have some. Yeah, my cousin he has a like a he works for FedEx Ground, so it's like it's different because it's too many drivers, too many trucks, you know. And then sometimes like it's more easy when you have like a 5 or 6 trucks. If somebody is not coming in, it's you can jump in the truck and then do the job, you know.
Yeah. So you're looking for
Or
something around that size?
yeah, something around like that size, and then after that, figure out like how we can escalate, because that's my plan. Always trying to get escalate that
Okay.
the
So you
company.
want to start like 5 or 6 and then grow it and scale up, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, um that's my plan right now. So yeah.
Okay. When you say scale up, what does that look like to you? Does that look like 30 trucks, 50 trucks, 100, 200?
I,
I know it's hard to
it's
answer, but
yeah, it's really hard, and especially when sometimes you have like a shortage of drivers, and depends which states, you know, if you go to west side states, you can get some shortage instead of east side. It depends, you know. So, but I can say maybe around like between 40 and 60, maybe.
okay. All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's dive right in. I got Biz Buy Sell pulled up, and we're just gonna start looking at opportunities. So let me share my screen in a second. And um, this is actually, I was kind of excited that you said you wanted to look for a trucking company because I'm a CFO of a trucking company, so naturally felt like a good fit, and I have a lot of experience in that area, so it's definitely something we can look at. So let me share my screen here.
It's pretty cool.
So we're looking in the Florida area, right?
Right.
So I got got the Florida area pulled up here, and just kind of real quick before we dive right in. So I asked you a couple questions to try to understand, the scope of what you're looking at, so we can really narrow down our search and not really waste our time, right? So if you want to start
Right.
off with the 5 or 6 truck fleet, we don't want to go looking for a 300 truck fleet, right?
No.
And really there's two things that I've noticed in getting a deal done when we're talking about dealing with banks. So we're not
Yeah.
talking about, in real estate, you can go get a DSCR loan pretty easily with just bank statements, and as long as you show that you have cash, you can close on those deals. It's a whole different monster with buying a business. Probably almost always or almost never going to get away with doing that as what you would typically do in real estate in terms of acquiring properties. So it's definitely more intensive. The due diligence is definitely more intensive. And the two things that I see that banks look at are credibility. So that's like
Right.
step one: credibility, your experience, your history in whatever industry you're buying. So let's say you want a trucking company. If you've never been involved in trucking, it's going to be really hard to get that deal done, because then you're going to be classified as like really, really high risk. And you may
Right.
find some banks out there that'll work with you with no experience, but your interest rate's going to be super high, and it's just going to be
Right.
really challenging. Sounds
Yeah.
like you've got some experience, so that's great. So really the credibility, all that does is just open the door, and it allows you to walk through it with the bank.
Right.
And from what I've seen, you're not really going to get better interest rates just because you have a strong track record. Now, unless you have a really, really strong relationship with the bank, that doesn't happen overnight. That takes years to build. In those
Yeah.
cases, yes, you probably will be getting better interest rates. They will look at your deals more favorably. But if you're someone kind of just off the street, building a new relationship with a bank, just because you have experience doesn't mean that's going to get you a better rate. All that's going to do is just open the door for you to have a conversation.
Right.
And then the second thing is the financials, they just have to make sense. And if we think about, again, because I know you've got a real estate background. So if I correlate to real estate, what we try to do in real estate is really leverage as much as we can, financing to purchase an asset, right? Well, it's very similar for trucking. The trucks, trailers, those are assets. And what we're going to look to do here is try to leverage as much as possible. They're actually in terms of the LTV, the loan to value percentages, they're pretty similar for what you see in real estate. You're probably looking at 75 to 80% LTV when you're talking about buying trucks. There's also, if you're talking about buying the business as well, there's also receivables. You can get a line of credit, a revolver off of receivables. So that's another potential source of leverage that you can do for buying a trucking company. And a lot of times the bank is going to want to see some skin in the game, right? And kind of just
Right.
like on the real estate, they want to see some skin in the game. So it's no different here. So with that, we'll kind of just dive right in and just look at what we find. I actually did have a couple pulled up that I thought that were interesting. I just kind of wanted to mention these two real quick. So I'm looking at this established trucking company here in Orlando, Florida. They're asking for 5.3 million.
Right.
What really stood out to me was this 25 million in cash flow. And I wanted I wanted to talk about that real quick, because that's just first of all, we're looking at a listing with big round numbers. What are the chances
Yeah.
that they're going to have an EBITDA of exactly 1.65 million and exactly 25 million in revenue?
Yeah.
There's really no way 25 million, their cash flow is 25 million when their revenue is 25 million. So, you're
Yeah.
going to see things like this, even the information that's put on the listing, it's going to tell me a lot about,
Yeah.
the kind of trucking company it is, the quality of data that they probably possess. I'm looking at this, and, these are probably just estimates, right?
Yeah.
Um, so,
But
just kind of some things to keep in mind, especially if you're searching for a business to buy. In this case, we're looking at trucking companies. Having someone that knows what they're doing, that can qualify, pre-qualify deals
Yeah.
and kind of just almost underwrite it to some extent, like in, just in terms of doing some basic napkin type of math, to just look
Right.
at it and say, hey, does this even make sense to even reach out and try to get a hold of someone, right? So if
Right.
I look at this other one, here's one where I looked at this and I immediately was like, this is not even close to being realistic whatsoever. And it's probably something that, you should just move on. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out there just so, people watching can get a feel for what type of listings are out there. Not all of them are good listings, and just like
Yeah.
real estate, you want to underwrite them. So they're saying 1.2 million asking price, cash flow is 1 million. That's amazing. I wish I could find a business that was cash flowing 1 million for 1.2 in revenue. And then it talks about, there's only 8 trucks here. So if you do the math, and 3.2 million, that's about 400K annually in revenue for a truck, and I have never seen that in my life. Now again, there's different industries or different segments of trucking,
Oh yeah.
but I think a safe number to use would be 225K to 250K um, in revenue per truck. And looking at something like this, those are some pretty crazy numbers. And then it even talks about this advertisement is really geared towards being like a passive investor. So someone looking at trying to get involved in trucking as a passive investor. First of all, I think it's a bad idea because trucking is very labor intensive, and I don't I haven't seen someone be able to effectively manage it, from a long distance in terms of not being involved very much. The profit margins are just razor thin. So you really have to stay on top of managing your business. But if you look
Right.
here, it's saying we require, and he's saying this is a franchise model, which is very interesting. It requires upfront capital of 1.2 million, and it's an ongoing management fee of 10 to 13%. This is like something I see this and I immediately run the other direction. That definitely doesn't look like a deal. But I just kind of wanted to just
No.
bring up two that I saw that like were definitely, um, at least to me, from my perspective, something that someone should not really explore further. So if we kind of dive in here, I sorted by price. So if we're looking at that 5 to truck range, this probably makes sense for us to sort by price, lowest to greatest.
Right.
Looking at here, let's go ahead and kind of just go in here. I see a lot of FedEx routes. Me
Yeah.
personally, it wouldn't be a good fit for me because when I look at something like an Amazon route or a FedEx route, there's a lot of what I call vendor lock-in risk. So what happens if Amazon's probably a more realistic example. What happens if Amazon just decides they don't want to work with contractors anymore, or a certain segment of contractors, and
Right.
your business is 100% revenue? Um,
Tie with FedEx.
yeah, tied exactly with Amazon, right? And all of a
Oh
sudden your
yeah.
business is, going to zero. That's definitely not something that would make me comfortable with doing. I'm looking for something with diversification and revenue, so that way, my risk is minimized.
Right.
And that's definitely what the banks are going to see. Anytime you see a really large concentration of revenue with one customer, they're definitely going to look closer at that, and it's going to make it harder for a deal to get done because the bank sees that as risk, and they should, because it is risk. Like I said, if that customer goes away, that's a lot of business evaporating overnight, right?
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. So we got a 4 truck hauler fleet. So let's click on that one. And we got again, this is another one where they're asking well, let's see. Their gross revenue is 1.6 million. And if we look at cash flow, a lot of times what they're determining cash flow, if we just look at what they're saying here, they're talking about basically, to me, this looks like an EBITDA number. So if anyone out there doesn't
Okay.
know what an EBITDA is, they didn't list it here, but essentially EBITDA means earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So let's say the company, now again, I haven't looked at this deal. I'm just pulling it up for the first time now, but let's say the company had 200K in profit and their interest expense was 100K. So now we're looking at, you know, an EBITDA of 300K, and now we add back depreciation, and let's say that's 200K. So that's how they're getting to that 500K number, where they're adding their profit, they add back all their interest expense, and then they add back all their depreciation to get to that EBITDA number. And what I see here is a lot of times they will add back seller discretionary earnings, meaning let's say the owner was getting paid $100,000 a year, they'll
Right.
add that back on top of the number. And they usually, you know, put it right into the EBITDA. And that's usually a point of negotiation where, you know, I would typically go to the seller or the broker, whoever, and say, hey, in reality, you know, we don't really think adding back 100K for the owner is really appropriate, because that's like saying that the owner didn't really add any value and you're adding it back into the deal because you can run this business without the owner. And that's just not the case a lot of times. So
Right.
when you're buying a company, you know, you're going to want to get paid, right? Someone's going to need to step in and manage this new business, and that's not going to be for free. So adding that back into EBITDA, you know, a lot of times what they'll do, as far as like, you know, again, we'll just pretend this is the EBITDA here. They usually do it off like a multiple, and you know, whatever the EBITDA is, they do a multiple of 4, and that's how they come up with, or 4.5, sometimes 5, very rarely, but they'll just say, hey, EBITDA, whatever our EBITDA is, times 4, and that's our asking price for the business. Well, if they're adding back that seller's discretionary earnings, that could be, you know, that 100,000 could turn into 400,000 of additional, you know, money that they're adding to the purchase price, which is, you know, pretty crazy when you think about it. So that's usually the first thing I look at whenever they're trying to add back the seller discretionary earnings. And sometimes it's like okay to add back a little bit, but adding
Right.
back 100K, which, you know, really turns into 400K when you look at the multiple, that sometimes can get a little extreme. So that's a little helpful tip on negotiating there. So we're looking at this deal. Got 1.6 million in revenue. They're saying 4 trucks at $10,000 a week gross. That's pretty high. Depending on what kind of business
Mhm.
or what segment they're in, I haven't seen that in the segments we run, but again, there's, you know, there's different trucking segments that make a lot more, you know, if they're specialized, there's opportunities to make that kind of money. But seeing that across the board is, you know, usually pretty challenging. So, you know, a lot of times they're trying to pump the numbers up here in the listing, right? And then once you
Right.
get actual financials, you can go in and verify, you know, that the numbers are actually real. So let's take a
Right.
look at this. They're doing a lot of breakdown here.
Yeah,
Let's
I can see that.
and again, here's another ongoing management fee. This is actually the same guy with a different posting. It's the same one, because I saw the video down here. It's the same one. And it's just a different posting. So again, we're looking at this one that the numbers don't really make sense, you know, just on basic underwriting. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of move on. So again, I'm going to pass on these FedEx routes. I've seen a lot of FedEx routes for sale for several years, and it always makes me question, why are there so many routes for sale?
Yeah.
You know,
I asked my cousin to. One of the cause is they um they are pretty picky right now, so they put a lot of cameras inside the cabs,
yeah, yeah,
and
there's
then
a lot of requirements for safety.
yeah, and then they need to upgrade the queuing all the trucks too. So if they have old trucks, they need to keep updating. So yeah, that's pretty much one of the cause of the a lot of these guys selling those businesses right now.
I looked at this one. Usually, I don't even click on things that say lucrative trucking company, because I know I see the profit margins in trucking, and they're definitely not lucrative. So I usually pass on those, but it intrigued me. You know, here we got a seller financing opportunity, right? So if we look at this, we look at cash flow. this actually looks like somewhat of a real number. So what I do is we're just going to assume that the cash flow here is an EBITDA number. So I'm going to take this 613, 414, and I'm going to divide this. Oh, hit the wrong button. Divide this by the revenue. So the 4.04 million, 4.041029. And it is a 15% EBITDA margin. These numbers make sense to me. Like these look like real numbers from what I would expect to see. I've seen anywhere from 5% EBITDA margin to 25% EBITDA margin in trucking. So seeing something at 15% is, it definitely checks out. It makes sense. So another thing you gotta ask. I mean, you're looking for the Florida area, right? Are you looking for to stay within that like demographic of travel, or are you open to going to all 50 states? Like, tell me about what you're looking
I'm
for.
open to go to all 50 states, but I want to, oh, maybe I want to be on the Sun Belt area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
because it's more easy for, like, I don't know, like, I think the geographic is not too bad. Like,
Okay.
so, yeah.
So looking at this one, they're basically saying this is Amazon and it's Midwest. So right there for me, like I would automatically discount that valuation because if it is like 100% Amazon, that's concerning to me at least.
Yeah.
There's definitely operators out there that would be like all over Amazon, right? It's just, everyone's different. It's just me personally, I see that as a concentration risk. So that's not something that I probably would look at pursuing. And another
Yep.
thing to consider is you want to be buying value. And you don't want to just be buying trucks. You want to be getting other assets besides trucks and trailers. You want to be looking at their employees, right?
Yep.
You want to be looking at because you want to acquire talent. You mentioned before that people are really hard to find. Well, a good way to acquire talent is to acquire an existing company that's already got good talent.
Yep.
The other
Especially
thing you want to,
as management too, sometimes like
yeah, absolutely. And then you want to acquire good customers too, right? Uh, pretty much just about any trucking company can go out and get their own Amazon bid. Not saying they're going to win a bid, but to me, buying a company just for the fact of that they work with Amazon wouldn't be a good fit for me. Now, if they had a really strong customer base and they were customers that maybe I don't have access to right now, that becomes pretty attractive for me because you're buying something that you don't have today.
right.
So what is intriguing here is there's 27 employees.
Right.
The seller is willing to carry 200K, so you got some seller financing here.
Right.
And I didn't see, so we got 11 modern trucks. So I don't really know what they're defining as modern, but I'm just gonna say, just for simple math, that it's maybe not a brand new truck, but it's a newer truck within the past few years. So I'm going to say, let's just say 125K. So we're looking at a total asset value on the trucks of 1.375 million, and he's asking for 1.5 million. So we're
Right.
we're kind of getting close to the ballpark here. And if we look at, I'm trying to find, do we have any trailers in this deal? I may be missing it, but I would assume they would have trailers too.
They
That would
say
be,
they have 11 modern trucks.
yeah, I see the trucks. I just didn't see if they had any trailers. Um, that would be one thing I would follow up with if I was going to reach out on this one. What is very odd to me is that they have 11 trucks but 27 employees. That seems like a very large amount of employees for the
Yeah.
trucks.
And they say here they have with 9 full-time drivers and 2 part-time drivers. So it's gonna be 11
Yeah.
drivers.
So where are all these other people coming from? Would be my question, right? What I typically see, or what I think a good target is having 4 trucks to 1 back office person. That's typically, a pretty well-run company. Now, again, different revenue or different segments in the trucking industry may be more back office intensive than others, but a 4-to-1 ratio is pretty good. This ratio is definitely not that. But
Yeah.
it is interesting that he's willing to carry a 200K note here. So that's we'll go ahead and keep looking. It looks like there's only 2 pages of results here. So let's go ahead and check out. Did you want to send me some that you found? I think you said you found some, right? There should be a chat in here. If you want to send me the links, I'll pull it up on my end.
Okay. Oh.
And I'll just keep looking here for this for these other listings. So we
Yeah.
got
Just give me a second here.
sorry. Looking at this, 7 trucks. Yeah, I mean, I think on this one, the numbers just, I'm not finding anything that really just makes sense. Well, I found that one we looked at earlier.
And then I found one says it's a freight forwarder. And
Okay,
then
so like a brokerage or
yeah, they work as like a um storage at the same time.
okay.
So pretty much to dispatch, and then they said they asking for 320, and the the sellers carry on $70,000 for 24 months.
You want to
The
send that one
reason,
to me?
just give me 1 second here because I wrote it down.
Yeah, there should be a private chat we have in here. You can just shoot me the link and pull it up. Man, I'm just seeing some crazy ask here. Well, actually, they got 1.4 million in real estate too. So that's another
Yeah,
attractive source that you can leverage as far as getting a loan to cover 75% of that or whatever. That'll help you get the deal done. But the asking price of 4.5 million, and they're doing 4.5 million in revenue. That's a lot that they're asking for.
yeah, it's a lot. Let's see.
And at this stage, all we're trying to do is basically just find some that just somewhat makes sense, and then just reach out to the broker. Usually, they'll have their phone numbers posted here. One thing to note is, man, I have had so much trouble getting a hold of brokered listing agents. It's crazy. I'll fill out the contact form. I'll call them. I'll call them multiple times, and I can never get them to pick up the phone. And it's just crazy. Sometimes what I do is, if I'm really interested in something, um, I will go and call the actual brokerage and then ask for the person. And usually when I call the brokerage itself, I can get a hold of a receptionist or something. And then I'll say, hey, does this, obviously not in this way, in a more polite way, but hey, is this guy interested in making a deal? I can't get a hold of this person. And I'm not saying him in particular, but just in general. So that's one thing to be aware of. Do you have that link I saw you sent me that link to my phone? Do you have it to where you can send it in the chat?
Just give me 1 second if I
Let me
can
try
here.
to send it. Not sure if it'll work, but let me try. I can try to send it to my.
Yeah, because I'm on the phone right now, so I don't know if
Okay,
jump.
this it right here? Well, hold on. I have to share my tab. Is this it?
Yeah, that
Okay,
one.
cool,
It
cool.
says that the guy needs capital. That's why he needs to sell. But it looks pretty new company from 2020. So I don't know.
So you got 5 employees. Um, Typically the one I would avoid Yeah, again, this is just my personal preference. I would avoid the ones that have like one or two employees, just because, if that one employee is the seller and they're gone, there goes all the knowledge and all the value, right? So like, what are you really paying for at that point? Um,
Right.
or even if it's just one or two people, or I mean, what if that one person leaves, and again, you're losing all the value, and now you're on the hook for paying whatever you paid, and you don't have anyone there with that, historical, that just knowledge, right? So,
Yeah.
but 5 employees is not bad. Let's see. The thing that makes something like this tough, like, let me see, we got 46K in FF and E. So I'm trying to figure out what exactly their assets are, because that's the first thing I look at is, okay, what assets do they have? Because if I'm going to go get a loan, I need to leverage those assets. And anytime there's a deal that is like service based, like let's say a marketing company, for example, they don't
Yeah.
have any assets. All they have is
No.
computers. And I'm going to have a hard time getting any sort of leverage from a bank on
Yeah.
personal computers, right? So those are, if I'm going to go into that kind of business, you're definitely going to have to push for some sort of seller financing component. So let's see. Moving on. I'm still trying to find the assets. I don't see them. Did
Nope.
you see any?
No,
And
they just lease a warehouse, like a 5,000 square feet warehouse. That's it.
gotcha.
And then
Um,
the FF and E, so the furniture and whatever, the furniture, fixtures and equipment is 46,000. So you see that number below FF and E,
yeah.
that
Yep, I
one.
see that. So let's look at the revenue. So it's 1.1 million in revenue. Let me do some math here. And just from what I know on what I've seen, I'm gonna say they're making I'll just say 10% margin. I think it may be a little generous, but I'm just gonna say 10% margin. So that's,
Hmm.
I mean, I guess I didn't need a calculator to do that math, but it's, $111,000, right? If we're looking at an annual revenue of 1.1 million, so you divide that out, and if we look at, we're probably netting $9,000 in profit a month based on that. And he's saying that he's willing to carry 70 grand for 24 months, which is 24 months. That's a very aggressive term. Usually I would like to see at least 3 years, ideally five if you can get it.
Yeah.
Um, at least like I know in real estate, there's sellers that will carry, seller financing for 30 years, and they're okay with it. I definitely don't see that in businesses. It's usually like 5 years tops. I'm sure there's deals out there. I just haven't seen a ton of them that'll carry more. 8% interest rate, not cheap. $3,000 a month payment. So you got to think about it. You're netting 9K a month, and 3K of it is going to go to servicing this debt, right? So that's
Right.
basically a third of your profit. It's not going to leave a whole lot uh,
No.
on the bottom line. And then the other thing to consider is receivables, right? So trucking, 3PLs, freight forwarders, brokerages, etc. Most of, not all of them, have receivables. So there's definitely a carrying cost to receivables. And if you're only netting, 5 or 6K of profit a month, that can be challenging. Let's say you got, you're doing over 100K a month in revenue. Well, that money, those receivables are going to be extended for 45 days, maybe 60 days. So if we're saying 60 days, you need at least 100K um,
Yeah.
of cash flow floating
Cash
out
flow
there just for
flowing out there.
receivables, right? So it's a pretty thin, not say you can't pull it off, but it's a little thin on the margins. But
Right.
then the other question is, how are you going to solve that gap between the 320 and the 70K? Because there's not really a whole lot of assets here that you can leverage. Um,
Yeah.
you'd have to come in with cash, right? So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. If you're looking to come in with cash, you can maybe would make that work. I mean, hey, if you got enough money, you can make any deal work, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's not a problem if you got enough money. But if you're trying to get into this creatively with as little money down as possible, this one's going to be tough unless he's going to come up and essentially full cash flow the whole thing. But then if he's wanting the same terms, chances are you're going to be in the negative in terms of cash flow because your payment's already 3K. And then if he says, okay, yeah, sure, I'll seller finance the same terms on 2 years for the 320K. Now your monthly payment's going to be a whole lot bigger, right?
Right.
So that one's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but that one's probably one of the better ones we've looked at. You got any other ones you want to take a look at?
Um, so yeah, so I'm trying to like because I haven't like my buy box is kind of like because my wife she has a like cleaning company here, and
Okay.
then she has experience in doing like after construction cleanups, like when they do renovations or that kind of stuff. So she does that kind of job. So and then sometimes I help her to do that kind of job. And then I saw like a company here. It calls like a water damage restoration, like a mold remediation assets business for sale. So
Okay.
that kind of like similar like after she does that kind of jobs as well too, like remediation sometimes, like especially here in Canada, most of the houses has basements, and then all the time is water damages in the basements because
Nice.
yeah, and then yeah, she has experience in that too. So I saw a business here in Florida too, um, and they say is asking price for 325,000, and then that it was established in 2007, so
Nice.
six,
Okay.
16 years and they have like a triple B A plus rating, so it's kind of interesting here, but
Cool.
it doesn't show any like EBITDA data or doesn't show anything, just kind of like just
So I got this one
um
pulled up here. It's I know this one's a little bit probably a little bit bigger than you were looking to chew, but this is 6.8 million.
right.
If you look at the EBITDA, 1.63 million, you divide that out, it's actually 4.1, almost 4.2. That's a very reasonable number. So if I look at this and if I was truly interested, um, I would probably reach out, because it's like, okay, well, these numbers can, generally speaking, from at least what I'm seeing, they make sense. They're not just crazy high. They're not asking for, we've seen a few where they're asking for their revenue. Trucking is not a software company. They're not going to get the software type evaluations.
Right.
So, a multiple of 4.2, pretty reasonable. I think that's definitely worth a conversation because, they're pricing it to sell. They're not, throwing out some astronomical number. They're being pretty realistic here.
Right.
Let's see. A lot of times you don't actually see, from a anonymity perspective, they, hide the company name. Usually you're not going to get, it sounds like you already, you've been searching around, this, but, you're not going to get financials until you sign an NDA. That would be the next step is, they would fill out the contact information. They would reach back out to you. It would probably be this agent and he would say, hey, thanks for reaching out, sign this NDA, and then I'll send you all the financials and all that good stuff.
R- Right.
But it looks like
Yeah.
they actually posted the name here of the trucking company. So you could go look that up and kind of, confirm some of this info. And look, they even sometimes streamline it. They got the NDA right here that you can go ahead and sign and shoot over to them.
Right.
So we got 65 employees, quite a bit.
What?
Um,
Wow.
yeah, you want to take down this deal, 65? Go get it. You know, get you started right there.
For sure, why not?
Yeah. It so it says it operates 75 trucks, but it owns
Wow.
28 trucks and 42 trailers. So my assumption, the difference between 75 and 28 is they have owner operators, maybe lease trucks involved. I don't know without talking to them more. They distribute dairy, meat, fish, fresh, all that,
Yeah.
refrigerated. So obviously look to be in the refrigerated industry. Temperature controlled. Yep, I missed that part here.
Yeah, it says they have owners operators here. Yeah.
Yep, yep. They do long haul, regional, dedicated. So they do a good mix of a lot of different things, which is,
I
nice to
like it.
see.
Yeah, I like
Yep.
it. Yeah. The different variation. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean this looks like one that kind of passes that initial sniff test if you were willing to bite at it, fill out the contact information and then again, like I said, next steps would be to look at the financials, and then that's when you can really dig in and start doing your due diligence. But at this stage, when you're just online searching for stuff, you just want to look for something that's like, hey, does this, again, napkin math, does this make sense? Looking at it from a
Right.
high level, because you don't want to waste your time if they're doing 18 million in revenue and they're asking for 50 million. It's just not realistic.
Right.
Kind of like in real estate, you're purchasing a property for 200,000, and you need to know when you're underwriting that deal that it's going to appraise for 200,000, because if it doesn't appraise for 200,000, there's going to be, two things, right? The deal is dead, or you're going to have to come up with the extra cash. And it's no different here. A
No
bank may
difference,
say,
right?
if the seller's asking for just something unreasonable and you really, really want this deal, the bank will say, okay, well, we'll give you financing, but it's going to be 70% of what you asked for, and you're going to have to figure out the other 30%, right? So you definitely want to make sure that it's a bankable transaction. Um, Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. So, kind of recapping, I mean, again, it's the credibility as step one that opens the door, and then step two is making sure it's a bankable transaction. And part of that is by doing the underwriting here and just making sure that the numbers make sense.
Yeah. They even asking for like if I need more information, they attach the NDA, so that's cool.
Yeah. Cool, man. You any other deals or you want me to take a look at?
No, I think that's pretty much like, and then thank you for like disclose all that kind of stuff, like take the video, divide it, this and that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I had fun. I think you should take down that 65 truck deal. I'd love to see that.
You wanna you wanna partner with me? I send you the JV
Oh no,
agreement.
I can't do that. Since I already work for a trucking company, that'd be a conflict of interest on my end. But I would love to see you do it. That would be pretty cool.
Oh, for
That would
sure.
be awesome.
If you wanna like help me with that, like give me some
Yeah, for sure. I definitely wouldn't mind if you find a deal and you want to hop on another call and we can dive into it and take a look at it. And more than happy to do that.
no, for
Absolutely.
sure. I will. Yeah, no, thank you, man. Thanks for your time and thank you for having me here and then really enjoy it, man. That's
Absolutely,
cool.
man. All right. Well, appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. We'll talk about other stuff and real estate and all that other good stuff too. But thanks for joining today, man.
No, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for
All
having
right.
me.
Take care.
Take care. Okay.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.